But I had to learn how to be a CEO and a mom 6 years into my journey. And boy, was that a wake up call. And while I could foresee that there was going to have to be a shift, I didn't anticipate the impact that those struggles would have.
You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found in the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie, Calls on Call Extraordinary Answering Service, as well as the Bold Business Book. And today we're welcoming / preparing to learn from Julie Cropp Gareleck. I hope I said that last name okay. I'm trying.
No, it's okay. It's great.
Author of Dare to Become, which sounds exciting, from the corner booth to the corner office. So, Julie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So let's start with the book. What was going through your head when you decided you should write a book?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to some degree, I've always wanted to write a book, just never really didn't know what it was going to be about. And I had reached 13 years in business. I had achieved some milestones that I'd set for myself. And I really found myself in a place where I was asking a lot of questions around what's next? What's the next milestone? What do I do now? And I was looking for inspiration. And I flipped through journals that I'd written from the time I was 16 years old until now. I'm in my mid 40s, so lots of years to cover. But I started reading through journals, and in the process of looking back over the course of my career, I really found inspiration in kind of revisiting my 20-year-old fearless self. And reliving some of the things that I had overcome, some of the successes that I'd had. And that's really where I found my voice and I found the words to write Dare to Become.
Nice. She's had 13 years in business. Now, you've had a few businesses, is that right? Or have a
Yeah,
few
so,
businesses?
so we celebrated, so Junction Creative, which is my digital marketing agency, we celebrated 15 years this past spring. So I did
Congrats.
read my book. Thank you. Yes, very exciting. And I also am invested in other businesses just as an investor or an owner, but I've done that for the last 20 years as well.
Very nice. So,
Yeah.
what was your first business? The first, what I'll dare to call first real business? Maybe
Oh,
not just lemonade stand or anything like that.
yeah, so I would say first real business would be, or at least I would say real. I mean, I started a consulting business years before I started Junction Creative. I did it very briefly and realized that I needed to get more experience before I could really figure out what I was going to offer and how it was going to be different. So Junction Creative is the business that I started 15 years ago, and she's my labor of love. I've worked on her for a long time, but that's the first real business.
All right. And what made you start? It's a marketing agency, right?
Yes, we are a full service digital marketing agency. So we work with small to mid-sized clients. We work with the Fortune 1000. And I like to tell folks we combine, traditional business consulting with that of an advertising agency. So we do the smart thinking, but we're also really great at the branding and design.
Very cool. So, what made you start that?
Yeah, so really it was my experience that I'd had. So I started my career working in Philadelphia. I worked in the entrepreneurship space, working at an entrepreneurship institute and then a venture capital firm. So I was working with companies already on, trying to find companies that had really great products or services. They had some scalability to them. And when I moved to Atlanta, when I met my husband, who I've been with for 18 years, I realized that the venture capital climate in Atlanta at that time was not as sophisticated as it was in the Northeast. So I really pivoted my career and started working as a strategist for interactive ad agencies at the time. And so I was working on a lot of strategies for big clients, big brands, and this was really before digital grew up, right? I mean, I remember Twitter launching when I
Yeah.
worked at one of those agencies. So, and it was just through some experiences that I'd had there. I couldn't really quite find a culture or an environment that aligned with the type of environment I wanted to be part of. And I really just said to myself, you know what, like there's a way to do this transparently and still be really creative, but maybe add a little bit more business measurement to it. And so that's really how Junction Creative was born, where that intersection between, creative and execution or strategy and execution.
I was just going to ask you where the name came from. So
Yeah,
that's more or less it. That's the junction part.
exactly. Yep.
All right, very cool. And when you first started, was it you or did you have business partners?
So when I first started Junction, at the time, there were a couple of coworkers that we had kind of joined together and decided that we wanted to go down this path. But as I'm sure you know, with starting a business, you're not walking with your salaries. You're not walking with your comfort of, getting that paycheck every 2 weeks. And so I was kind of the last woman standing, and I really was committed to launching it. So it's been just me as the, sole owner of Junction since then.
Wow, okay. So you said you've been married a while and Junction's been going on a while. Which
Yes.
came first?
I was married just recently. I think I was married less than a year when
Okay.
I decided to start the business. And my decision to start my business is not necessarily one I would advocate, but I had had a rough experience at work and didn't mean to, but quit my job.
So
And
you didn't mean to?
Me too. I mean, it wasn't my intent. So I had gone back into the office after having had an illness. I was actually recovering from the swine flu. So I don't know if you remember that before,
Oh yeah,
it
way
became
back
a
when,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. And at the time my manager was really, kind of berating me in emails and telling me that, I needed to work and, I really wasn't sick and all of these things. And it was just more of a culture of just demeaning and, really just kind of, picking on me because I, happened to get sick. And when I went back to work after having been out for 4 days, I kind of turned the corner. I went into his office and I literally this moment came over me where I thought, you know what, I'm not doing this. Like this isn't right. And I put in my notice that day. And so while I don't advocate that you walk in and you quit your job, I will say my husband was incredibly supportive. He's an entrepreneur himself and has been for longer than I have. So he, said to me, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I really think it's time for me to start my own business. And that's exactly what I did.
That is awesome. I was
Yeah.
just going to ask you, what did your spouse say? You're a year into the marriage and you're like, funny story. I'm going to go down this entrepreneurial path. Sorry about the health insurance.
Right. Well, and what's interesting, so I feel very fortunate because he was a business owner and he understood. I mean, he watched me go through some of these work environments that I was in, and even he was incredulous and going, this doesn't happen in business. Like it does.
Shouldn't,
It
yeah.
shouldn't, and it does. And so when I quit, I don't think he ever questioned was I capable of doing it. I do think obviously he wanted to be supportive. He even offered to fund it, and I said no. And I really wanted to start my business on my own efforts and really prove to myself that I could do it.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you quit the job. Hey man, I'm out of here. You start your own gig. Tell me about day one when you're on your own.
Day one is so sobering. I mean, it's exciting, right? I set up an office at my house. I had my little corner, desk and all my computer and my shelves and everything. And I really, because of my background, having worked in the entrepreneurship space, I knew how to write a business plan. I immediately got to work in writing down all of the things I needed to do, right? So business plan, marketing plan, what was I going to sell? Like, like who are my
Details,
clients,
right?
right?
Details.
Like, what am I going to do? How to set up a bank account. I really just put together this extremely long list, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to get through it in a day. And I really just kept adding to that list until I knocked all of those things off, to really get the business up and going.
All right. So day one was actually trying to figure out what the business is, let alone waiting for the phone to ring with somebody on the other end with money to give you or anything like that.
Exactly. I mean, I had this experience, right? Like I'd been in the work, place for more than a decade. I grew up in a family business. So I had a lot of experience understanding how to operate a business. I had experience in marketing. I had experience as a strategist. And so it really was, again, kind of figuring out really what those intersections would be and how I could add value, right? Because I think a lot of times when folks start businesses, you say, oh, well, if they can sell this widget, I'll go sell this widget, right? But, when it gets into the service space, you really have to be able to deliver value over and above the next guy. Because in digital marketing or in marketing in general, I compete with thousands of agencies every day. And we all sell similar services, but it really comes down to how am I going to be able to add more value?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a call answering service, and our competition, I joke with people, is business owners, nephew, niece, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. It's their whatever relation that they have within arm's reach that they can just say, here's the phone, answer it.
Mhm.
And it's funny because those people, it's probably not their dream to answer phones for whatever business they're answering for or
Right?
asked to answer for. And they're certainly not trained on customer service, or unlikely that they're trained on customer service.
Yep.
And they're probably tolerable at best, but
Mhm.
it's still the lowest hanging fruit for this business owner. So
Yeah.
that's what we compete with, which is kind of funny because from
Right?
a marketing business side, you're competing with the nephews, the nieces, the spouse. Hey, just put something together. Why don't you put me together a logo or something like that?
No,
Some
and
kid
yeah.
in the basement with a computer, right?
Oh, even now, I mean, you probably wouldn't be shocked. I mean, you understand how this space works, but I mean, literally, there are times where I'm competing and they'll say, yeah, well, like, this guy worked in his basement, it's one guy. And then I have to almost justify that for 15 years, we've been a team of people. We have established processes, we have established protocols, we're a legitimate company. We've worked with, 500 clients. But it's funny how I still compete against the person that just graduated from college that understands what Instagram is, right? It's
Yeah,
difficult. It's difficult.
fair, fair. It's funny, like they're interested in hiring the hobbyist rather than the
Yes,
actual business. Because they
exactly.
can save money on paper, kind of, maybe. But in the real world, we both know that's not the case.
It's not.
So
Yeah, exactly.
interesting. Tell me, you have employees now, right?
I do, yes. Mhm.
All right. How many employees do you have now?
So we have 10 full-time employees, and then we have a handful of what I call floaters. So people that we pull in for strategies that maybe require somebody that has 40 years of experience or 30 years of experience in a specific industry. But we are still growing. But by design, we are a boutique agency. I never aspired to have 50 employees and build, an agency that was that large. So definitely more of a boutique agency.
No, I get that. The rules of the game and employees change at 50. So
Yes,
that's
yes,
a number I think a
they
lot of
do.
small business owners are like, we'll work up just to that. But tell me
Yes.
about your first hire. That had to be fun or interesting.
Yeah, so crazy enough. So I was in business for just under like probably 18 months. And at that time, I'd had two contractors who were helping me with some of the web development side of things. I had a designer that was helping me, put together pitch decks and things like that. And month 18, I was networking with a former colleague who I worked with and was introduced to a stakeholder at a Fortune 1000 company and went from zero in revenue to 1 million in revenue literally overnight. And I had no employees.
No.
So I literally signed a big contract and I hired a director of operations was my first hire because one of the things I knew we needed with this account was we needed process. And I knew that without it, we would fail. So that was my very first hire. And then, of course, I built out a team with designers, user experience strategists, website developers, to build out the team. But I really did go from 0 to 15 overnight.
Nice. So that sounds risky because you're throwing all the chips in there essentially with one very large client where if they went away, you have a bad day. A lot of your
No,
employees would have a bad day.
yeah, it was my biggest fear. I mean, for the 3 years that they were a client, I woke up every morning going, okay, they represent 80% of our revenue. So if I lose them, we're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened 3 years in. Their new CEO, you'll recognize the company, Yahoo was the company, and Marissa Mayer at the time came in as the CEO and said, hey, we're going to pull all of our agency spend and start doing it with internal employees. We're bringing everybody back into the workforce inside of our offices as opposed to remote work. And because I was so generous when we negotiated the contract, I gave them a 90-day out, where most
Oh, wow.
agencies,
Okay.
yeah, so it's kind of my fault. But that being said, I mean, when it happened, it was my biggest fear. And when it happened, I literally just put my nose down and spent the next 90 days replacing the revenue, which I did.
Yeah, in the end, 90 days is not the end of the world. I mean,
No,
that's some runway. It's a short runway, but it's not the end of the
yes.
world.
But I hustled. Yeah, I hustled for that 90 days. Yes.
Fair. So
Because I
tell me,
think
how did your employees react when they heard the news?
they were nervous, right? I mean, they knew how large this client was. I think they were concerned, I'm sure. But they also saw that I was literally like calling everybody I knew. I was networking, we were marketing, we were sponsoring events. I was doing all of the things to bring clients into the mix. And because I was able to bring them in over the 90 days, it gave them a lot of confidence just knowing that their jobs really weren't at risk.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about the design thing and hiring a person that does design. Because it's such a subject thing that I imagine it's tough to just interview someone and say, hey, what's your biggest strength, biggest weakness? Some cheesy little question there. But now you got to figure out how they do with design and working with the different platforms that you work with. How do you find someone that fits well in that box?
Yeah, so I've been so fortunate. So Allie, who has been the head of our design team actually since day one. So she was one of the early employees that I had. She's been with me for 15 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah, she has been. She's amazing. And I will say what's interesting is what I will say about her design is because her design skills grew up in a non-digital world. She did a ton of packaging. She did a ton of like static design work. As digital started to become the mainstay 15 years ago, right, when everything became digital, she was able to adapt her designs and her design approach to capture those platforms. So it is though hard to find, right? Like when we've had to hire other design folks, it's hard to run them through like a test project to see if their design is any good. But I definitely look for people that have been in this space for longer than 10 years because they will have had experience doing billboard, doing, interactive screens, not necessarily, video that's, on social. So I definitely look for someone that has more years behind them from a design perspective.
Fair, totally fair. Tell me about, I mean, we're talking 10, 15, 20 years. The internet marketing, it's all changed quite a bit. The
Yeah.
platforms that exist, the platforms that are popular, the demographics that are on any given platform.
Yeah.
How have you evolved or your business evolved with those different evolutions of the internet?
Yeah, we've had to, right? It's forced us to evolve. I will say, when we started, like I said, social meta, what was Facebook, right? Before Instagram became popular, we were, building content and, building creative for those platforms. But then over the years, we really had to evolve, right? And as digital became transparent from an analytics perspective, we had to really understand all of the platforms, how the algorithms work, right? And how to balance the execution. So, a lot of clients will come to us and say, I want to spend $10,000 a month on this platform. And we have to explain to them that it is an algorithm, right? And you can't just go throw more money at it and get a better success metric, that it's really an iterative process. And so I will say our team's constantly training. We're retraining on the same platform, right? When new versions come out, certainly now with AI, oof, I mean, it's forcing us to stay on our toes in terms of what's relevant. But I would say for our clients, it's really difficult because they might just be starting. And if they're just now starting in 2024 on digital, they're already behind, right? So they've got so much ground that they have to cover, that sometimes they don't understand why it can take a year for things to really start, generating revenue and generating leads.
Yeah, marketing is an interesting game
Hmm.
because it's an investment and
Yes.
typically takes quite a bit of cash to get it going. And you don't know if that was a good investment
Mhm.
until that money is long gone.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and you hope that it's a really good investment. But a lot of the times, I would dare even say 80% of the time, I guess in my experience, it's been less than great. But there's that 10, 20% where you're like, yes, let's do more of that.
It is, and you're right. I mean, and I will say this. So, our approach to digital, some agencies are the big idea, right? Like, what's the big idea that we're going to get? It's going to go viral and it's going to be huge. I mean, big ideas are great, but it's that consistency and execution that's really what generates those results. And so, unlike some agencies, we're not a set it and forget it. So, when we're doing a campaign or we're launching creative, we're actually monitoring that on a daily or every other day because we're going to see based on the metrics if something's wrong. And you can notice that like right away. You don't have to wait 30 days to see if it's not working. But I think the hardest part of our job is educating clients that, again, right, that we understand that you're spending a lot of money, but you do have to play the game. If you want to rank in Google, if you want to, have an Instagram post that goes viral, you have to play the game. And it's not a quick game either.
No, no,
Yeah.
the 10-year overnight success, right?
Right, right.
Oh, that's funny. Tell me, you alluded to it a little bit. AI, let's chat about that. That seems to be the
Hmm.
buzzword now. I
Yes.
feel like it's just like .com was in 2001.
I know, right? Can you believe it's been that long? Oh gosh. But yeah, no, AI is, I would say if you listen to the news and you read the bylines, everyone says AI is taking over everything. What I will honestly tell you is that AI is super cool, right? We're still learning what value it can add. What I will say is that in our space, you can tell if something is being generated by AI, right? They
Mhm.
use words that we would never use in marketing. The research is not complete. And so just because AI tells you so doesn't make it true. So we are having to educate clients on how to use it and how to use it the right way. I'll give you a great case study. I had a client who was putting together their about us, right? Their paragraph about their firm. And they didn't want to hire us to write the content because they thought we were too expensive to help them put it together. And they bragged, oh, I'm just going to throw this into AI and look at what it came out with. Put it on their website. They were promoting their company. And so, just to kind of see, I pulled the paragraph and I ran it through AI, and it turns out that they plagiarized the NCAA.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I warn folks and I warn listeners that, hey, if you're going to use AI, use it responsibly and just know that it's still new and it's still learning. And we're probably years away from it being 100% accurate to, from a pure content perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you dig right in there in the whole trademark copyright
Yeah.
thing that I don't have a good answer for it, but I feel like the question is not being asked as much as it should.
Mhm.
For just really quick example, I was at a baseball game, my son's baseball game, and there's a daughter of some kid or a daughter of some parent that has a
Yeah.
kid playing ball. And she's bored to tears because Little League, whatever else.
Right.
And I don't know, she's 5, 6, something like this. Big Taylor Swift fan.
Mm.
And we started talking about pancakes. I was just joking with her. And we started using Chat GPT to write a Taylor Swift song about pancakes.
Right.
And it
Right.
came out and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And for a second, I thought, if I was a songwriter, I'd be a little worried. But then I thought, where is ChatGPT getting the information
Right.
to come up with these lyrics? That's
Yep.
directly plagiarizing.
Correct.
Plagiarizing from hundreds or thousands of different places, but
Correct.
still, they didn't pay for that content.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that's ooh, I don't
It's
know how to solve that. I don't, but I
no.
feel like someone with more power than me should raise their hand and say, hey, funny story. A lot of people are making a lot of money off of other people's stuff. And those people aren't being compensated. We got to fix that.
Well, of course. And think of it this way too, right? Because every major platform, like Google's coming out with it, like they all have their AI. And I look at it and go, Well, I remember, starting my career when Google had 14 items on the Google search engine, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, let's just be honest. So, back then you couldn't plagiarize against someone unless you directly copied it off their brochure or an early website that they had. And to your point of what you just said is that they are getting that from somewhere. And so, while it can be a tool, is it a tool that we have to use for
Have
everything?
to? No, certainly not.
Right? I mean, not that I'm saying that I'm not into AI because everyone looks at me and rolls their eyes because they think I'm just old, but I do like it because it can sometimes help with prompts or with keywords and things like that. But overall, we don't, as a general rule in our agency, we don't use that as the foundation. We use it as a tool to help us be more competitive with the content that we're creating. But boy, I mean, it can really give you some some interesting queries.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like the promise that is being made
Mhm.
is not 100%. We'll
Oh
call it
yes.
85% maybe,
Mhm.
something like that. I think of the in the call answering world, I remember seeing the article about the chat bot that gave a wrong answer
Right?
to the customer, but
Yeah.
the customer didn't know it was the wrong answer because it was a chat
Mhm.
bot on this company's website. Why would they think it was the wrong answer?
Right?
And so whatever it was, it snowballed from there. And the company's like, oh, that was AI. That wasn't really us. Like you can't really separate yourself from that. You're the one that put it on your website, trusting that it would do the right thing. It didn't do the right thing. So here you go.
And think about the control that you don't have, especially in your industry, right? I mean, you are frontline customer service. You are the ones that are providing the answers. You're on the front line. And so if there's a bot that's giving false information, that's going to come back on you and you don't
Huge.
have the control over it. And so I do think that that's where it becomes a slippery slope of, how valuable is it valuable that it can give you, hey, here's the contact information, or hey, we're closed, call us back tomorrow. Yes, but I've seen, even as of late, apps that are using AI to provide, I don't know if you saw this, but they're providing therapists to people that are looking for mental health resources. And they came out with this app that was essentially a therapist AI bot. And the
Well, that's
bot
a
was
taking
it was
chances.
Oh, no, it was. And what happened was when the doctors who started the app were managing the data and they were managing the prompts, they did not have any issues with information. As soon as a company took over and started running their own scripts, it was generating content via AI that was inaccurate. And it was also creating health problems for individuals. And so, of course, it changed the trajectory of their business, but it just goes to show you that without those controls and without somebody who is mining the data and making sure that the AI is working properly, it's not going to be 100% effective.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got to keep it in its little sandbox.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
this is the information that you can access or learn
Mhm.
or offer answers from, but not the rest of the internet. Because good golly, that's a
Oh,
mess.
yes, exactly. You said it best. It's a mess.
I think of this business that I had a long time ago. We had changed, we had moved every few years, right? Different office, whatever. And I started out working from home.
Yeah,
So we had our home address on the internet, and it didn't matter how many times I changed it on Google. An old address would show up, or someone would say this is permanently closed because we hadn't been in that office for 7 years. And it was a constant mess. And I joked with people, I'm like, this is like fighting with God.
yes,
There's
it
no
is.
phone number that we can call and say,
No.
like, hey, maybe put right information up, right? We wouldn't put the wrong information on our website. We put the right information, just use that. But
Yeah,
somewhere Google was pulling in information from
yeah.
some distant website that we don't know.
Oh, exactly. And then the
Oh,
path that they give us agencies too, like they'll give us a number or they'll give us a form that we can submit the information to. But like clients don't even understand too that like it took us for one client, it took us 6 months to recover access to his Google My Business profile. Like,
wow.
and it
That's
was because
insane.
he didn't remember who set it up. He changed his email. To your point, the location of the business changed. I mean, it was just this now we figured it out. We did get it, but it took six
Nice.
months. I mean, it was a nightmare.
Wow. I
Yeah.
remember getting man, I don't know if it was Yellow Book, it was some Yellow Pages type company. And I feel like as yellow pages were dwindling, they were clawing at whatever they could find.
Yeah.
And they came to me and they're like, hey, we will fix all this for the monthly nut of whatever it was. Let's say
Yeah.
$100 a month, something like that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But once it's fixed, isn't it just fixed? And they're like, no, no, if you stop paying, it goes back to what it was. And I'm like,
What?
oh, that's extortion.
That is
That's,
extortion. That's crazy.
yeah, that was not great. So we didn't do that. But at any rate, it's interesting how some of the stuff is still a little bit Wild West, even for
It is.
2024.
It is. Well, and again, if you, I mean, and I look at the people who've set things up and how things have changed over the years. So if you set an account up on Meta 15 years ago for your business, everything's changed. Now there's business manager, there's all these different suites. And so if you aren't keeping on top of it and you aren't paying attention and you aren't the person who set it up, it's a nightmare to manage. I mean,
Oh my
it's
God. It's so funny that you say that because I was just in Meta this morning
yep,
trying to add a user to one of our business accounts. And I was like, okay, this is, I don't know if they're $1 trillion company, multi-billions at least, hundreds of billions. I feel like they should have a user experience person that
I know.
says, hey, let's make this user friendly. Instead, it makes Craigslist look decorative.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this
Oh
is
yeah.
brutal. So then I had to do a web search, like how do you add a user and all this kind of stuff. Like I
Yep.
shouldn't have to do that.
No,
Shouldn't
you
have.
shouldn't. You shouldn't. And that's actually funny because in our agency, we have a lot of process documents for our internal team when they're learning or when we are managing clients. And so we have literally a step by step for virtually every type of thing, resetting, adding, because I mean, you have to distill it down. And sometimes those lists are 12, 12 deep that you have to follow just to get one piece of data updated. So, and we're
Yeah.
always updating those lists.
Oh my gosh. I remember we were, I mean, this is years ago. We had ads on Facebook. I think it was Facebook at the time. And I remember it was such a huge pain that I was just like, you know what? We'll market a different way. It's just not worth the headache. I really
Yeah.
don't want money going towards them. So let's just nix it.
Yeah. Oh no, I
Walk
know.
away from that, choose a different medium. There's millions of options out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So run with that. Tell me your business over the course of time. How have you evolved as a business owner?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm still evolving. I'm a work in progress, I like to
Hey,
say.
are we all? It's all good. Safe place here. We're good.
I would say, I would say I've grown up, right? Like if you think of even when I started my business, I had experience behind me. I had worked for my family's business. I understood certain components, but I do think that as a naturally curious person, I just continue to learn more. I think, as the business grew up, I had to grow up in terms of how do you manage the finances and I had to show, I took courses on how to manage the money and I, made sure to pay attention to profitability and usability and are our resources, fully allocated, right? So I would say I've evolved and gotten a lot smarter. I think that some of the challenges that I faced definitely helped me to grow up, right? To toughen up. And, continue to try to learn how to be more relatable to the younger generations, right? Because I'm a Gen Xer and the way I grew up was very different. I drank from a water hose and played outside for 12 hours a day, right? And so I didn't come into the workforce with any expectation about what a job should give me. I was just really excited to like enter and learn. And I do think that newer generations learn differently, right? Like they grew up on technology. They want things faster. They want, the quick steps to get there. And so I feel like I'm still working on that. And I think I'm still kind of refining that. But definitely a work in progress.
And it's so, I get it. I'm right there with you. Gen X as well.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was putting together interview questions to add an employee to our business.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I wrote that I did not ask, but I want to so bad is what do you believe the world owes you?
Mm,
Because I feel like you and I would say that's up to us. I mean, we got to figure
correct. Yeah.
and earn it. And
Yeah.
there's some people that I have interviewed before where I think that they'd be like, "Oh, I got that list right here."
Huh? It is.
Um,
And
but
it's
I never asked it. So for
Well,
fear of what the answer would be. But I feel like maybe that would be a quick way to choose. Do I hire this person or do I just let them be somebody else's problem?
no, exactly. Well, and I think for me too, like, maybe it's also too because, and I'm sure you're come from this perspective too, you've built and sold companies, right? Like, we know how hard it is every day. We know how hard it is to earn every dollar. And so when we go to hire individuals to join the team, we're hoping, right, that they see value in joining the organization and that they want to contribute to it. And a lot of times when I'm doing the interview process, I'll get a lot of, well, this is what I want. This is the type of environment and the flexibility that I need. And I get a list of what I want. And those are not necessarily the folks that end up making it to the final interview cycle because they don't ask the question of what can I do for the organization to take it into the next direction. And so I do think that it's not necessarily their fault that they think that way, but it's just a difference in the generations and their approach to work or a work environment.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what it is. I feel like there's a lot of people that want to start on the top rung versus realizing that it's a ladder that you have to climb.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not that
Sorry.
easy. I mean, I remember, in my early career when I worked in Philadelphia, I had a great job, had a great mentor. What a great experience that was. But I was still the person that they asked to make coffee for every board meeting. I had to make sure that I had the creamer that people liked, the sugar that people wanted. And, as a 20 something young person, I could have looked at that and been like, is because I'm a female and they're just asked, I'm basically the assistant. But I took that and I ended up making sure we always had the best food for the meetings, the best coffee. And that actually opened up a lot of conversations because people were like, oh my gosh, Julie, you really know how to, set the experience and you know how to make this a really positive day for all of us. We're going to be in a room for 10 hours. And so, but today, if I were to ask an employee to prepare coffee for a meeting, I'm fearful for what I might get. So I still make it. I still take the trash out, like lead by example, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. It's so interesting that you say that because I guess I have the work ethic. It sounds like you do as well, where anything that you do, you just do it the best you can.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
there's some people that are like, unless I believe that this is a job that's going to save the world, I don't feel like I even need to do it, let
Yeah.
alone be asked to do it.
Correct.
So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, very interesting dynamic. But that said, there's some people of all generations that I've found that are good or have a higher level work ethic,
Absolutely.
which I imagine you have as well.
Well, absolutely. And I think like you would probably agree too. So, we're also two business owners, right? We also probably have a very different approach to our, like, we have this innate desire to build and grow things. And so we can't expect all of our employees to want those same things, right? So, I don't necessarily need a team of people who want my job or want to own my agency, right? Like, do you know what I mean?
To a point,
But
no.
to a point, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't expect them to want the things that I want for myself. And so I do think that's where kind of growing as a business owner and growing in my business is understanding and appreciating the paths that everyone wants to follow. And I've been very lucky. I have many of my employees who have been with me for years and years. And
Nice.
I think that that's a testament to the fact that they have found something that they like and that they can get behind. But they also get some flexibility because I've given them that, right, in terms of the structure and the culture.
That's cool. That's cool. Tell me, I want to talk a little bit about your office space, pandemic. Are people working from home? Are they in the office?
No, so we've had a physical office. So I will say during the pandemic, obviously we all get the same call to action to shutter the doors, and go home. And we did. We worked remotely for, I believe it was 6 weeks. And then the day that they said that we were able to go back into the office if we could socially distance, we did. So with what we do, we could work from home, right? I will say that post-COVID, we do all work from home on Wednesday. So it's
Oh,
working on Wednesdays. I'd love to get us to 2 days a week, but I do think that in order to get to that place, we have to make sure that everybody is comfortable operating in a home environment, right? I know I can sit at my desk for 8 hours and go to the bathroom and grab food, but for a lot of folks, it's really hard to have a discipline to stay focused on business when other things are happening at home, whether it's kids or laundry or, the cable guy shows up. It's just, it can be more difficult.
Yeah, I get it. Totally understand. Tell me, what have been some of the challenges in your business since you started that you didn't necessarily anticipate?
Oh, wow. That's good. Well, we've talked about losing a large client, right? 3 years in. So that was
Yeah.
definitely a big one. I would say one challenge I could have never anticipated. I was in business. I started when I was 30. My husband and I were starting a family and met with a lot of infertility struggles for 5 years. And so during that time, though, I was still running the company and I was still responsible for all of those same things. And so was very fortunate. I have twin daughters who will be 9, almost 10, they'll actually be 10 in December. But I had to learn how to be a CEO and a mom 6 years into my journey. And boy, was that a wake up call. While I could foresee that there was going to have to be a shift, I didn't anticipate the impact that those struggles would have just on just, making sure that, physically I was fine, during that time period, but also still being able to grow the business.
Fair. You know, it's interesting. I didn't realize that we had this in common.
Yeah.
My wife and I ran into the same thing. I have a
Oh,
10-year-old son now, but it was 5 years of dinking around with
yeah,
fertility clinics and that whole
it's horrible. I mean, it's a horrible
yeah, I wouldn't
experience.
recommend it. I wouldn't
I mean,
recommend it.
I will say this. I mean, I think and you guys probably fall into this category as well, is that, my husband and I were business owners. If there was something we want, we built it. If there's something we needed, we would go get it. If we really were in control. And that whole experience was um devastating from the standpoint that it was completely outside of our capability and we had to really trust in specialists and doctors that knew what they were doing, and it was a 5 year journey. And then even once I was pregnant with the girls, there were so many restrictions, and so I actually had to make the decision to downsize my team. I
Oh,
made the
wow.
I did. I made the decision to operate with some of the retainer-based clients that we had had for years, and I could not focus on big growth. And while again, having children is my greatest gift, they are my greatest gifts. But I will say it was very difficult for me mentally to shift from growth, go for it, to we're just going to operate status quo. We're going to keep our body healthy, our mental, we're going to keep ourselves healthy for the next 9 months and just focus on that. And so I look back now and I remember how difficult that was, having to, let some of those employees go. It still kind of hurts to this day because I never would have let them go if not for the reality that I needed to scale back in order to to really focus on my health for that period of time. And I'm happy to say that, after they came and after I learned how to juggle both, I did build the business back dollar by dollar and got back up to the levels that I had been at previously. So, I mean, I got back there. And so in hindsight, I wish I would have given myself a little bit more grace through that process because that was a really tough time.
No, I get it. I get it. It's tough to even think about, right? We're talking 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, 15 to 10, whatever.
Yep.
But yeah. Yeah, it's a tough, I don't, for me, it's kind of like the pandemic where you think like, oh yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, I forgot about that. I probably
Right.
intentionally ignored
I
that
blocked it out.
portion.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. What have
Yeah.
been some of the successes or the good things that you didn't necessarily anticipate when you started?
Oh, so there's been so many great things. I mean, I would say, I'm incredibly humbled by my team and the people that have joined Junction and have really poured their heart and soul into their jobs and really like been great stewards for this vision I had. And so I'm so thankful for that. And I don't think that it's not that you think about it once. I do think about it every day. Like I'm very grateful that people have trusted me and have trusted and invested in my business and put their careers into my business. So that's sort of something that I think of often as, it just strikes me, right, as something I'm really grateful for. And then, certainly I just think over the years, I've gotten to work with so many incredible entrepreneurs, so many incredible business owners that are really innovative, and making waves in their industry. And so I think that as I was building the business, I was also building these relationships with people who are still in my life today, even though they may not still be a client after 15 years, but there are definitely some clients who have been with us for a very long time, and we've watched their businesses grow, and that feels good to be part of that as well.
Nice. Very cool. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to ask you about your book, Dare to Become. You mentioned briefly why you wrote it. What was I guess tell me about the goal. Was it more a personal thing, or is it more spread it out to the world? Is it a marketing tool? Tell me a little bit about why.
Yeah, so look, I'm the original journalism communication major of the 90s, right? I always wanted to be a reporter. I, always wanted to write a book. I just didn't know what I wanted to write. So I actually still really appreciate journalism and how hard it is to write a book, and so I love everything about it. So I would say that was one thing. So I've always sort of been a writer. That's always been my thing, right? Writing content, journaling, that's always been something that I've wanted to do. But then certainly, when I started to sit down and write this book, it kind of took on a life of its own, and the story unfolded for me. And so I do want to use this book really as a tool. I want to share my journey with other folks. And if I can inspire one person or change a perception or give somebody the motivation that they need to go be exceptional at what they want to be, then I've done my job. I will still, be consulting. I definitely am lined up for some speaking engagements. But this is not, a book to sell a program or anything like that. But it really is part of my platform and wanting to continue to help other businesses build and scale, in their industries.
Very cool. Very cool. Tell me about the cover. What made you decide on that picture?
Funny story. So my publisher had said to me, "Hey, put together some book cover options, send them over to me. Let me take a look." So I had our design team put together some really great, what I thought were really great book covers, very compelling, creative, very exciting. And he was very polite. And he said, Julie, these are, beautiful, right? But we either sell a concept or we sell you. And those are your options. So you don't have a concept because the book is not, here's a program and here's how you replicate it, right? I mean, the book is really a prescriptive bio. It walks through my journey. He's like, so we're going to sell you. And this was one of the pictures we had done at a photo shoot that I had that same year. And I remember picking out this outfit. I had a stylist pick out all these other outfits that weren't me. They didn't represent who I was. And so at 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and went, I've got it. It's in my closet. And I pulled together this shirt, these pants, these shoes. These were all things I owned. And I put them on, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I've got the shot." And so it was the last shot of the day. And when we took the photo, I felt confident and I felt secure. And so we put on the book cover, and my publisher was like, "Well, that's how you put a picture on the cover." So he was very happy with that. But it was just kind of haphazard how that picture came to be on the cover, because we had put together a ton of other options that had a really cute chair and some different fonts. But that's how I ended up on the cover.
That is cool. No, it's very confident.
Yeah.
It's very yeah, I guess it's what anytime you see an image like that that's so simple but powerful,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, what do we got here? Better.
Yeah.
And then the name of the book, it's
Yeah.
just yeah, simple. Dare to
Yes.
become. It's cool. It's cool. What have been some of or what has been some of the feedback that you've gotten from the book?
Oh, we've gotten some great feedback so far. We've gotten some book reviewers that have published some amazing reviews. And, they've said that it really is almost as if they were having a conversation or that they were walking beside me as they were reading the story. And they've also, said that it was unlike other books that they've written because it wasn't a how-to. It wasn't a step-by-step, but it was more so inspirational, but yet also with some, crumbs of tips or insights like, hey, these are the three things you're going to run into, and you've got to be mindful of these. So there still was a takeaway, even though it wasn't instructional. So I'm very happy so far. I'm sure other reviews will roll in here as we get closer to print, but so far so good.
Yeah. Oh, I have to apologize. So it's not printed yet.
It will be on shelves on September 3rd. It is available for pre-sale virtually anywhere online. But yeah, we are physically on shelves September 3rd.
Oh, very cool. I have to apologize. I didn't realize that.
No,
That
that's okay.
explains why I couldn't find it. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. That'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it. That is super cool. Tell me just really quick, you have a publisher. How did you choose your publisher?
Oh gosh, well, I would like to say I chose them. So as I'm sure you know, going through the publishing process is very difficult, right? So you get a lot of no's, and I was so humbled by all of the no's that I did get. I wasn't loud enough, I wasn't well known enough, I didn't have a million followers on Instagram. So I went through a ton of no's, and a dear friend and colleague of mine had introduced me to my publisher. And when I wrote the book, I was working with an incredible book coach, Rick Wolf, who is one of the best in publishing. And he said, "Oh, you worked with Rick?" And I said, "I did." He's like, "I'll read your book. Let me take a look." And then he said he would publish it. And so it really speaks to the industry and how, if you're really good at what you do, people will pay attention. And it took me a long time to find someone who said yes, but I did. And I'm very excited to say that a
Nice.
publisher is willing to publish my book.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm a little, I don't even know if I should say embarrassed, but when I published my book, I just self-published because my sister is a writer and she was telling me all the things with the agents and all that kind of stuff.
Well, but
And I was like, screw
self-publishing,
that.
but what I've learned, right, is that, publishing is a beautiful industry, but it is not designed for authors to have control over the destiny of their book, right? So for me, I wanted a traditional publisher because I felt like I wanted the industry to validate that this was in fact a book that was of
Oh,
value.
sure.
Um, but if I were to publish future books, or when I publish future books, will I do things a little differently? Probably, right? Because I say this to my husband all the time. I should have trusted enough in myself and my own capability, likely as you did when you self-published. Your book has gone on to be, a big success. And I think that, when you trust yourself and you trust what you know you're capable of, you don't always have to have, that to rely on. So I think if you've published a book, regardless of how you've published it, it's still an incredible feat.
Fair, fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations on your book. It's a big
Yes.
deal.
Thank you.
It's impressive. I imagine you hear from people the same way that I hear from people when you tell them you wrote a book. They're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I meant to write a book, or I thought about writing a book, or I started a book, or just something where they
Yeah.
never actually completed it.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've also like people sort of like don't know what to say either because I mean it is kind of a foreign thing, and I guess because I've always wanted to write one, I just assume everybody else wants to write one, right? Like
Right?
that, and a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't understand, like why, like what, like I don't get it, and but you know what? We can't all be authors, so
No, fair, fair. Everybody's got their skills. It's all good.
yeah.
All good. Well, Julie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, anytime. Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me on my website, which is www.juliecroppgareleck.com. That is my website. And if you're looking for the book, like I said, you can Google the name Dare to Become, and you can buy it at Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, or any of your local bookshops. We're available online. And on the 3rd, we'll be on shelves.
September 3rd of 2024.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Julie.
Yes, thank you.
This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. My name is James Cademan, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call. offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. If you're listening or watching this on the web, if you could do us a huge favor, keep the algorithm happy, give it the big old thumbs up, subscribe, and of course, share it with your entrepreneurial friends, especially those that may need a little bit of inspiration from someone like Julie. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Julie Cropp Gareleck. Hopefully, Julie, I apologize if I messed that up, but tell me if I did okay.
You did just fine.
All right. Author of Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. And Julie, what about your the Junction Creative? Is there a website for that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.junction-creative.com.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.